us than J.D. Vance, our vice president. And when I say that,
The other insisted it was being blown out of proportion for clicks. Both spoke with absolute confidence. Because uncertainty makes people uncomfortable. What made the situation feel heavier was how it refused to resolve. No follow-up clarification. No additional context. Just the warning existing like a loose thread. Nobody could pull without unraveling the whole thing. Pop culture analogies. Multiplied because they help people process tension. This was compared to past moments where early signs were ignored. Stories where hindsight made everyone wish they'd paid attention sooner. Whether fair or not, those comparisons stuck, sarcasm sharpened as discomfort grew. Comment sections joked about the industry suddenly turning into a security briefing. But behind the jokes was a collective realization that words like protection don't appear randomly in hip-hop conversations. The media leaned into the uncertainty, amplifying speculation without adding facts. Headlines repeated the same sentence in different fonts, creating the illusion of development. In reality, nothing new was being said, but repetition made it feel urgent. Influencer commentary added noise instead of clarity. Confident takes based on vibes, not evidence, filled feeds. People trusted tone more than substance. Because tone feels decisive even when it's empty. The warning began influencing how unrelated content was interpreted. Normal posts were treated like signals. Silence was framed as tension. Activity was framed as deflection. There was no neutral behavior left once the narrative took hold. Some fans started expressing fatigue, not because they lost interest, but because unresolved tension is exhausting. Stories without answers hang heavier than scandals with clear villains. This one refused to give closure. The wildest part was how the warning overshadowed everything else. Music, achievements, and unrelated headlines faded into the background. When safety enters the conversation, it dominates the room. Speculation turned inward, with people questioning how often situations like this get downplayed. How many warnings get ignored because they don't fit a dramatic narrative? The conversation became less about individuals and more about patterns. Industry silence became its own storyline. No one rushed to deny or confirm. That restraint felt intentional, like everyone understood the weight of adding fuel. Silence, in this case, wasn't calming. It was ominous. As days passed, outrage cooled into vigilance. People weren't panicking anymore. They were watching, waiting. That's a different kind of tension. The kind that doesn't scream, but doesn't leave either. The warning had officially transformed from a moment into a lens. Everything was being viewed through it now. Past conflicts looked sharper. Future moves felt heavier. Context had changed permanently. By the end of this phase, the story wasn't escalating loudly anymore. It was settling into something colder and more serious. The kind of tension that doesn't trend every day but never fully disappears. Nothing had happened. And that's what made it unsettling. Because when the internet quiets down after a warning, it's usually because it's bracing for what comes next. By the time the conversation slowed, the implications had already settled in. This wasn't the kind of moment that fades when the timeline refreshes. It altered the temperature. Not panic, not hysteria, awareness. And awareness is the most uncomfortable stage because it forces people to sit with uncertainty. Nicki Minaj's public image didn't crack, but it recalibrated. Strength was still there, louder than ever, yet now layered with caution. Fans noticed the shift immediately. Not fear or precision. Every move looked more intentional, every post more measured. Like someone who understands the room changed and adjusted without announcing it. The warning reframed how people interpreted confidence. What once read as dominance now read as control. The difference matters. Control suggests foresight. Control suggests someone choosing survival over spectacle. And in a culture that thrives on reaction, restraint becomes its own statement. 50 Cent's role lingered like a watermark. He didn't elaborate. He didn't escalate. He didn't chase attention. And that consistency gave his words longevity. When someone known for theatrics chooses understatement, people assume the situation demanded it. Public perception shifted quietly but decisively. The conversation moved from gossip to consequence. Not legal consequence. Not industry punishment. The kind that shows up in posture, in timing, in how situations get handled before they ever reach the internet. Relationships around Nicki subtly adjusted. Not fractured, refined. People spoke less loosely. Lines felt tighter. That doesn't happen unless something prompts caution. The warning had ripple effects nobody could screenshot, but everyone could feel. The internet's role evolved too. Outrage cooled into
This is not something that is like a conspiracy theory. This shit actually happens. But if they're able to separate Nicki and Kenny, that makes Nicki vulnerable because your husband is your power of attorney. Your husband is your signature.
Outrage cooled into observation. Fans weren't shouting anymore. They were watching, waiting, and waiting is dangerous because it turns every future moment into potential confirmation. Critics tried to dismiss the entire situation as exaggerated concern. But dismissal didn't erase the question it raised. Why now? Why this tone? Why from someone who rarely speaks without calculation? Those questions stayed unanswered. And unanswered questions don't disappear. They linger. Nicki's silence on the specifics became strategic by default. Not addressing something doesn't mean ignoring it. Sometimes it means refusing to give a narrative oxygen. In a space that feeds on reaction, withholding response is power. The industry absorbed the moment and moved carefully. Nobody rushed to capitalize. Nobody rushed to clarify. The absence of chaos felt intentional, like a collective decision not to play with something sharp. What stood out most was how quickly fans matured the conversation. This stopped being entertainment and started being concern. The jokes faded. The sarcasm softened. People realized this wasn't about sides. It was about safety. The warning also forced reflection. How often do moments like this get brushed aside until it's too late? How often does caution get mistaken for paranoia because it isn't dramatic enough? Those questions don't trend, but they matter. Nicki's reputation emerged intact, but changed. Not weaker, not threatened, just more human. And humanity, when applied to icons, alters how stories are told about them. It replaces invincibility with reality. 0.50 cents involvement didn't spark a feud or a follow-up headline. It didn't need to. The weight was already carried. Sometimes the loudest thing someone can do is stop talking after saying exactly enough. The aftermath wasn't explosive. It was instructive. It reminded everyone watching that influence comes with risk, and visibility attracts more than fans. It attracts fixation. It attracts intensity. And intensity doesn't always announce itself before it becomes dangerous. As weeks passed, the moment became reference rather than headline. People alluded to it without repeating it. The warning lived on as context, shaping how future events would be interpreted. Nothing bad happened. And that mattered. Prevention doesn't come with proof. It comes with absence. Absence of escalation. Absence of incident. Absence of regret. But absence doesn't erase the fact that something prompted the warning in the first place. And that's where curiosity stays parked. Not loud, not frantic. Just present. This wasn't a scandal with a verdict. It was a pause with implications. A moment that reminded everyone how thin the line is between online conflict and real-world consequence. Nicki moved forward. 50 stayed quiet. The internet adjusted. And the warning did what warnings are meant to do. It changed. Behavior without demanding credit. That's the kind of aftermath nobody celebrates, but everyone benefits from. And those are the moments that matter most. Even when the timeline moves on. And if you're still here, don't pretend this was just another headline you casually skimmed past. This wasn't noise. This was a warning, the kind that doesn't scream, but lingers in your head long after the screen goes dark. So go ahead and smash that like button like it owes you money and try to duck the bill. Because every like tells the algorithm you want real breakdowns. Not watered down takes pretending everything is fine. Drop a comment and be honest. Was this genuine concern, calculated foresight, or the calm before something nobody wants to see unfold? Subscribe if you're tired of fake outrage cycles and short attention spans. Here, we follow the tension after the trend dies, when stories get quiet and consequences start showing up. No rush, no panic. Just pressure and patterns. Turn on notifications, because situations like this don't end, they evolve. What feels silent today becomes tomorrow's context when one small move suddenly makes sense. And you don't want to be catching up after the fact. Remember this moment. Warnings don't come with sirens. Protection doesn't get announced unless someone thinks it matters. And silence isn't peace, it's preparation. Stay watching. Stay questioning. Stay alert. Because in this world, attention is currency, tension is dangerous, and the truth rarely arrives with flashing lights. If you felt that shift in the air, you weren't imagining it. Something changed. And moments like that are never random. The moment this warning surfaced, the internet stopped scrolling and leaned forward. Not because it sounded dramatic, but because it sounded serious. When 50 Cent tells Nicki Minaj she needs protection, that's not industry chatter. That's survival language. This wasn't a congratulatory shout-out or a petty side-eye. This was the tone you use when you've seen patterns repeat and know how ugly they can get. The kind of warning that doesn't come with emojis or jokes, even from someone famous for sarcasm. And that's what made people nervous, because when threats start stacking and tensions stay unresolved, hip-hop history tells us one thing. Situations don't de-escalate quietly, they explode when ignored. Fans immediately asked what triggered this, who crossed which line, and why this felt like it came from behind the scenes. It felt like something leaked, not announced. The comparisons came fast. This made the Kardashians look like they're arguing over parking spots. This felt closer to chess than clout chasing, calculated, protective, and loaded with implication. And once protection enters the conversation, innocence exits. So why did 50 step in now? What threats are people whispering about but not posting? And why does this feel like the calm before something nobody wants to see unfold? Yeah, this wasn't advice. It sounded like a warning, before anyone could label it concern or dismiss it as theatrics. The message had already landed heavy. This wasn't framed like friendly advice passed around in a group chat. It came off like someone who's been around long enough to recognize danger before it trends. When warnings sound calm, that's usually when things are most serious. The context mattered, because this didn't happen in a vacuum. Nicki Minaj has been sitting at the center of non-stop tension for a while now. Industry beefs, fan wars, social media standoffs, and constant scrutiny have turned her presence into a lightning rod. Every move she makes attracts reaction, and not all of it is harmless. What raised eyebrows was the timing. This wasn't said during a heated argument or a viral moment that demanded commentary. It surfaced quietly, which made it louder. People started asking what had shifted behind the scenes that made protection a necessary word instead of an exaggeration. Hip-hop. Culture understands coded language. When someone like 50 Cent speaks, he rarely wastes words. He's built a reputation on surviving environments where warnings weren't optional, they were life-saving. So when he suggests protection, fans don't hear drama, they hear experience, reactions split instantly. Some fans saw it as overblown, another case of the internet turning concern into catastrophe. Others felt a chill, because they've watched enough history to know how fast threats escalate when egos and audiences collide. And Nicki's audience is massive, passionate, and always engaged. The internet began revisiting recent moments with new eyes. Old arguments suddenly felt sharper. Recent posts were reread like hidden messages. What once looked like standard industry friction started getting reclassified as something more volatile. Sarcasm flooded comment sections. Because that's how people cope with discomfort online. Jokes about bodyguards and armored vehicles flew around, but beneath the humor was unease. Protection isn't funny when it feels necessary. It's unsettling when it sounds precautionary instead of hypothetical. People started asking who the threats were coming from. Not names, but sources, fans, rivals, unhinged corners of the internet where obsession turns dangerous. The lack of specificity made it worse. Because mystery allows imagination to run wild. Nicki Minaj's history added weight to every assumption. She's never been a quiet figure. She confronts conflict head-on, claps back publicly, and doesn't retreat easily. That boldness has always been part of her appeal. But it also places her closer to the fire than most artists. That's where 50 Cent's involvement changed the tone. He's not known for playing guardian angel without reason. His brand is survival, calculation, and long memory. Fans immediately wondered if he'd seen something the public hadn't, or if he recognized a familiar pattern forming. The speculation spiraled because silence followed. No dramatic clarification. No detailed explanation. Just the warning existing on its own, unanswered. And silence after a warning doesn't calm nerves, it sharpens them. Online detectives went to work, linking unrelated disputes into a single narrative. Arguments with other artists. Viral fan clashes. Heated comment sections. Everything became evidence once people decided something bigger was brewing. This is where exaggeration took over, because the story felt cinematic. Fans compared it to scenes from crime dramas where someone says, "You might want security," right before the plot thickens. The comparisons were dramatic, but they stuck because the tone invited them. The media response didn't help. Headlines leaned into implication rather than clarity. Protection became the focal word, stripped of nuance and turned into alarm bells. Every repost amplified tension. Even when nothing new was added, some critics accused 50 of stirring fear unnecessarily. Others argued that dismissing warnings is how situations get out of hand. The debate wasn't really about him. It was about whether people take threats seriously enough when they're subtle. Nicki's fans, fiercely protective by nature, reacted defensively. Some dismissed the concern outright, insisting she's untouchable. Others doubled down, demanding accountability and safety measures. When fan bases mobilize emotionally, rational conversation usually exits quietly. The situation began revealing something uncomfortable about celebrity culture. The line between entertainment and real-world consequences is thinner than people admit. What starts as online beef doesn't always stay digital. Especially when millions are watching. This wasn't the first time warnings have been ignored in hip-hop history. And that fact hung over the conversation like a shadow. People referenced past moments where early signs were brushed off only to be regretted later. Memory became part of the tension. What made this moment distinct was the lack of spectacle. No shouting match. No diss track. Just a sentence that carried more weight than 1,000 tweets. That restraint made it harder to dismiss as hours passed. The story stopped being about whether the warning was justified and became about why it felt necessary now. Timing turned into the mystery. What changed? What escalated quietly while the public was distracted? Fans debated whether protection meant physical safety, legal shielding, or simply heightened awareness. The ambiguity left room for fear to fill in blanks. Because uncertainty always breeds anxiety, Nicki's public image began shifting subtly in conversation. Not weaker, but more vulnerable. And vulnerability, when applied to someone known for dominance, feels jarring. It forces people to acknowledge risk where they assumed invincibility. The sarcasm grew darker as reality settled in. Jokes started sounding forced. People realized this wasn't just another headline designed for clicks. It had texture. It had gravity. Industry insiders stayed quiet, which only added to the unease. When those closest to situations don't rush to deny, the public assumes there's more under the surface. Silence becomes suspicious, even when it's strategic. By the end of this first wave, the warning had done its job. It planted doubt. It shifted perception. It made people pay attention in a way casual drama never could. Nothing had happened yet. No confirmation. No escalation, but everyone could feel it. Something had changed. And in this space, change is rarely comfortable. Once the warning settled into public consciousness, the tone of the conversation shifted from curiosity to calculation. People stopped asking whether it was real and started asking what it meant. That's when things get dangerous. Because meaning is where the internet does its wildest work. The memes came first. Because humor is always the icebreaker for panic. Jokes about armored SUVs, private security squads, and call 50 before you call your lawyer flooded timelines. They were funny on the surface, but nervous underneath. Comedy has a way of disguising fear when nobody wants to say it out loud. Celebrity reactions didn't need names to feel loud. Vague posts, cryptic emojis, and suspiciously timed quotes sent fans spiraling. The internet loves implication more than confirmation. And implication was doing heavy lifting without breaking a sweat. What escalated things was how quickly old beefs got refiled as potential threats. Arguments that once felt like standard industry frictions suddenly looked sharper. Tone was reevaluated. Language was reinterpreted. Everything became suspicious once protection entered the narrative. The comparisons went off the rails. People likened the situation to mob movies where someone gets warned to watch their surroundings. Others compared it to chess, where you don't announce danger unless the board has already changed. The exaggeration stuck because the mood invited it. Fan bases didn't just react, they mobilized. Protective instincts kicked in hard, especially among Nicki's most loyal supporters. They treated the warning like a red alert, flooding comments with demands for accountability and safety. When fans feel threatened, logic becomes optional. Critics pushed back, accusing the internet of dramatizing concern into paranoia. They argued that caution isn't proof of danger, and that warnings don't always signal imminent risk. That perspective didn't trend as well because calm never outruns chaos. The conversation started fracturing into camps. One side insisted the warning proved something serious was brewing.